Peace and love, black family. Dr. Umar Johnson, live and direct, Memphis, Tennessee, Sunday, May the 15th. We are live at the Slave Haven Underground Railroad. We had a powerful experience. I want to give a shout out to the whole Black Tennessee family, and I want to give a shout out to We All Be Radio, the voice of Dixie. I just messed that up.
All right, go ahead. We All Be News Free Dixie for the 21st century.
This is Dr. Umar Johnson. Make sure you check out the We All Be News Free Dixie. We All Be News Free Dixie. Check him out. That's where you get the latest conscious information and critical information that needs to be put out into our community. Prince of Pan-Africanism, Memphis 2016. See y'all next time.
Thank you so much. We All Be is honored to have on brother Dr. Umar Johnson, the #1 requested black scholar on the planet, blessing us with his presence at Slave Haven today in the city of Good Abode, Memphis, Tennessee. How you doing today, sir?
Good afternoon. Glad to be here. Glad to be in Memphis, Tennessee. We had a powerful event last night at the New Chicago Community Development Center. Shout out to Sister Salmaat and Brother Osazi for hosting that event for me. Sold out, jam-packed, a lot of love. And today we're here at the Slave Haven Underground Railroad Museum, where we had an opportunity to see a true life hiding place, an underground railroad station for our ancestors who all participated in that great journey northward, trying to seek freedom on the Underground Railroad. So this was a tremendous experience, and I want to thank Mrs. Turner and family here at the Slave Haven Underground Museum in Memphis, Tennessee, for taking some time out of their busy schedule to meet with us.
That's excellent. I also want to talk about this year, 2016.
Yes,
sir. This is a really interesting year in terms of the energy, the paradigm shifting.
Yes, sir.
We losing a lot of people going home.
We are.
I just want to talk to you about, specifically right now, about PrINce and also Afeni Shakur,
yes,
the mother of Tupac Shakur.
Yes.
What do you think about their deaths? Because both these people seem like they were cremated real soon after they died, and a lot of people got questions about the way they died, and do you think that they were killed or murdered for their intellectual property?
With the Afeni Shakur situation, I'm not intimately familiar with the details of her passing, but what does raise suspicion for me about her untimely death was that the word was circulating that a full feature-length movie on the life of her son, Tupac Shakur, was in the making. And for her to die during the early stages of making that film is a great loss to us as a people, because she's probably the only living, she would have been the only living human being who could give us an accurate portrayal of who Tupac really was, what he meant, and what he was really trying to do. With her being gone, Tupac's legacy is largely going to be left up to speculation. Those who knew him, some may have even been close to him, but no one can really protect your legacy like your mother. And so for me, the loss of Afeni Shakur really means the loss of the true legacy of Tupac Shakur. As far as PrINce goes, I'm pretty certain that PrINce was murdered. I think he was murdered by Warner Brothers, just like I think Sony murdered Michael Jackson. PrINce and Warner Brothers had come to an agreement 2 years ago that they was going to give him his masters back, which really didn't make any sense after all this long fight he's had with them for decades. But the stipulation, in order for PrINce to get his masters, he had to give them the permission to reauthorize, to re-engineer the Purple Rain 30-year anniversary album. So they brought him back to the table just so they could get back involved into his music business. And I really believe that PrINce did not like what was happening. He was going to separate again, and they knew that they had to kill him before he separated to guarantee them a stake in the interest of his estate. I'm willing to bet, just like with Michael Jackson, we heard a few months ago that Sony Records bought back the Beatles catalog from Michael's family. That's why he was murdered, for the Beatles catalog. His family sold it, not knowing what to do with it. I forecast the same thing that happened with PrINce's estate. I'm willing to bet that Warner Brothers is going to end up owning all of PrINce's music again, and I'm also willing to bet that the family is likely to sell to Warner Brothers all the unpublished music that PrINce had. In fact, PrINce's unpublished music is probably worth more than the published catalog, because he had more unreleased material than he had released. And I really believe what they wanted was that unreleased material. Can you imagine how much money is going to be made off of unreleased PrINce albums? And it's even been stated that PrINce had enough material where he could release an album every year, I believe, for the next 100 years.
Wow.
That's why he was murdered. And for him to be cremated as quickly as he was, what multi-millionaire gets cremated within 72 hours of an autopsy? That doesn't even make any sense. That's because you need to bury the evidence that shows that this man did not die from an illness, claiming he had the flu. Who dies of the flu with the type of money he has that can purchase any quality of medical care available in the world? Not only that, he was seen riding his bike in a local park in Minnesota. What black person rides a bike in the cold with a flu? It makes no sense. He was murdered by the music industry, as was Michael Jackson, as was Sam Cooke. Okay, they murdered Sam Cooke because he owned his own music. Okay, PrINce was teaching other artists how to own their own music. You see, they murdered Jimi Hendrix. Jimi Hendrix's manager was an undercover British MI6 agent. And when Jimi Hendrix decided that he wanted to finance the Black Panther Party and other radical groups, his manager stepped in and forbade it. And then when Jimmy found out he was being robbed by his manager, he decided to separate. And the next thing you know, they find him in the bathtub from an overdose, Whitney Houston style. And I believe Whitney was murdered because Whitney was about to investigate whether or not she had been robbed from Clive Davis. Because for all the millions of albums that she sold and the billions of dollars she raised, going broke didn't make sense for Whitney Houston, who was the top female singing star of all time. Now, Mariah has sold more albums, but that's only because Whitney stopped publishing once she ran into her drug problem. So she was going to see where the rest of her money was. And I think she's probably going to investigate owning some of her catalog. And so she had to go.
So the problem is, like you talk about these different examples throughout history, Otis Redding, Sam Cooke, even PrINce and Michael Jackson, is that are we winning the battle but yet losing the war? Like we win some battles.
I don't think we're winning the battle or winning the war.
Okay.
And when it comes to music, you got to recognize that music is another white racist institution. And I think the murder of PrINce was deliberate, intentional, and was designed to send a message to all the black artists in the music industry that if you ever try to separate from us, we will kill you first. It's like the mafia. You cannot get out. Now, if you're a low-level artist, you'll get out because you're not worth much. But if you're somebody on that level, they're not letting you out. There's no way we're going to let you make money off of your album without giving us our cut. The message is clear.
And you know what's interesting, when you speak of Sam Cooke, I know his manager, Alan Klein, I believe his name was, he also managed the Beatles, and he stole from them as well.
Wow.
And so like, it's funny how these patterns come up and you know, all over the place.
See, Sam was also a good friend of Malcolm X and Muhammad Ali. And rumor has it that he had told Dr. King and Malcolm X that once they came together and stopped fighting, he was going to finance the new civil rights movement. He was dead within weeks. Remember, they killed Sam Cooke 3 weeks before they killed Malcolm X. He was killed right before Malcolm. So they was getting rid of anyone who could even potentially be part of an independent black progressive movement.
But how you look at, well, you go 20 years now with Tupac? You believe Tupac was murdered by the government?
Tupac was murdered. There's no question Tupac was murdered.
Okay.
In fact, we know for a fact that the CIA, excuse me, the FBI had Tupac and Big under surveillance for at least 2 weeks before their death. So if someone's trying to kill me and you're watching me, it's no way you can't know who's trying to kill me. And if no one is ever arrested or prosecuted, it's because you were the killer. You see, Tupac was working with the gangs in LA, the Crips and the Bloods. He was politicizing them, and he was going to put his money behind them. But Tupac was murdered by the music industry. How can you have the #1 selling rapper in the world also being politically inclined? Imagine if Jay-Z was also interested in the black struggle. Tupac was probably the most significant threat they may have had since Malcolm X, because he had the following, he had the popularity, he had the publicity, but most of all, he had the money to make a reality his dreams and visions for his people. He had to go.
Wow. And speaking of hip-hop, I want to get your opinions about the African Bambaataa issue. One of the founding fathers of hip-hop accused of molesting black boys when he was a younger man, and the backlash from the, I guess, the hip-hop community. What's your take on the African Bambaataa thing?
Well, with the African Bambaataa situation, I think it's unfortunate. I would have to say that a man is innocent until proven guilty. I have to say that. But if the allegations are in fact true, it's very sad that the origin of hip-hop culture is also part of the pedophilia conspiracy. I mean, we've derided the Roman Catholic Church for their role in it. We've talked about the black church for their role in it. And now having such a major cultural institution such as hip-hop, being embroiled in this type of pedophilia situation is very unfortunate. However, I would say though that whether he's guilty or not, that does not negatively reflect on the culture of hip-hop, because hip-hop is not about one person. Hip-hop is not about one person. Someone makes a mistake within the movement cannot be cast off of that person's mistake. Hip-hop is bigger than Afrika and Bambaataa, although he was one of the fathers of it. You know, it's sad. Being a psychologist, a school psychologist, I deal with pedophilia all the time. It's a regular occurrence in our community. I get emails, phone calls at least every month about pedophilia, mostly girls, but also boys. And we must keep in mind that most pedophilia victims are victimized by blood relatives. Now, in the Afrika Bambaataa situation, if that is true, what's alleged that he committed, he was not a blood relative of these men, which is somewhat out of the norm. Normally, children are molested by people they're related to. You know, and so it's a very sad thing. It's something that the black community doesn't want to deal with at all, because most people don't want to have to choose between victims and perpetrators in their own family. So the family tends to cover this up. I mean, you look at black women, 1 out of every 4 black women will be molested in her life. In almost all of those cases, the perpetrator will never be brought to justice, even by the family itself, which means the girl or the boy now has to live a life seeing the person who took their innocence and having to act like it never happened. Imagine being at a family cookout and the uncle or aunt who molested you is there, sitting right next to you. And everyone there knows that they took advantage of you. And not even the family will bring them to justice. I think that's a very sad occurrence, but it's a big issue. And I think on the positive side, if there is one, the Afrika Bambaataa situation has brought pedophilia to the surface in the black community as something that has to be dealt with.
I kind of compare it to, I mean, I know he's innocent to proven guilty. I compare it when I hear about Afrika Bambaataa, how great he was as far as his contribution. I think also about James Bevel, Reverend James Bevel of the Civil Rights Movement.
What about him?
Like, he was accused of molesting his daughter, sleeping with his daughters, but he helped organize the March on Washington, even the Million Man March. He was one of Dr. King's most trusted advisors and lieutenants. Yeah. He was very charismatic.
Very
orator.
familiar. But here's my thing, though. Was the accusation substantiated? And let me say why. One of the most powerful techniques you can use to disadvantage a revolutionary is to accuse him or her of sexual misconduct, especially with a child, which is why we got to be, even with the Afrika Bambaataa situation, we got to be very careful of making sure the evidence is crystal clear, that the people bringing the charges are not in any way, shape, or form operating under the auspices of the FBI. It just has to be something that's ruled out, because if you accuse someone of child sexual misconduct, the accusation alone is enough for them to be incriminated on their child abuse record, which means they can never be exposed to children ever, just on the accusation. It's on your record. You see, and even if you're proven not to have been guilty, you have to go through a process to get that lifted off. So when it comes to child sexual crimes, we got to be very clear, because children are very impressionable. And one thing I did in college, working on my doctorate, I did a research paper on child custody cases, sexual abuse, and the impression of childhood imagination. And what the research shows, children will manufacture a story to please the adults who are wanting them to say a certain thing. Let me give you an example. I'm interviewing a little girl, and she knows I don't like her father. I ask questions about an alleged experience she had with her father, but I ask those questions in a way that is leading the answer. Did he touch you here? You never ask a child to, you don't lead with that question. Did he touch, you don't, what happened to you? The questions have to be open-ended with no leading material as to what you want them to say, which is why whenever a child is victimized sexually, I don't think no one should talk to that child, no one at all, until you have a witness and a skilled interviewer. I don't even like the parents being the interviewers, because they're going to lead. Did he put his hand here? Did he touch you here? Did he take you upstairs? All those questions are leading. You're providing the details. To properly interview a child who alleges to be a victim of child sex abuse, it must be open-ended. Did something happen to you? Can you tell me what happened? Okay? That's how you're supposed to interview a child. You don't give them details about what you think happened, because you begin to create an imagination. And you begin to create what we call in psychology a false memory. And a lot of black men and women are in jail. And I know this for a fact, as someone who goes into the prisons, who are in jail for very long times, falsely accused of child sex offenses they did not commit on the implanted memories of children. We got to be very careful when we start talking about questioning kids about whether they were touched or not. The person doing the question cannot have an emotional stake in the outcome, or they will lead those questions.
Well, I ask you this as well, because I know you in the land of the kings, B.B. King, Elvis, and Dr. King died here. Yes. And on December 8th, 1999, it was proven in the court of law that the U.S. government was complicit in the assassination of Dr. King. And recently we lost somebody who was connected to that balcony assassination, Reverend Samuel Billy Cowles. Okay. And he was under suspicion, I don't know, years ago. He kind of, he incriminated himself on national television, saying he got the way so to get a clear shot. What do you think about his legacy, or what do you think about people that, you know, like Ernest Withers, for example, who's from Memphis too, who was accused of being FBI informant or traitor to the cause? What do you think about those people and their relationship to our history or our narrative?
For me, the system that creates those types of personalities should be the focus of our investigation more than the people themselves. Because until you do something about the system that breeds the sellouts, who the sellouts are irrelevant, because it's the system that's producing them. There will be another Barack Obama. There's another one coming. There'll be another Colin Powell. There'll be another Reverend Cowles. There's going to be others who come in their vein. So it's not the person that matters. What are we going to do as a community about the system that allows our best minds to be taken and used against us? The reason black people have more sellouts per capita than any other people is because we're the most hopeless people. See, if I don't have faith in my people's ability to overcome oppression, I will join the oppressor. Black people, less than any other group of people, don't believe we can shake this off. Even when you talk to scholars, revolutionaries, I'm beginning to hear elders say, we ain't never coming out of this. And I hate to hear that, because if a child hears an 80-year-old, imagine being 8, and you hear an 80-year-old who done lived his whole life said, this ain't never ending. Why should he fight it? I might as well go on to the other side. Which brings me to another issue. I think within the revolutionary community, one of our biggest problems is a lot of revolutionaries, especially in my generation, the young brothers, they're not really in the struggle to change anything. They're in the struggle to make change. They're in the struggle to get paid. They're in the struggle to hustle. It's about self-aggrandizement. It's about the compensation of one's ego. I don't see the type of scholars we had with the Dr. Benz, the Dr. Clarks, the Francis Cress Welsing, the John G.M. Jackson, George James. I don't see them types anymore. Now, black scholarship is a hybrid type of scholarship with an intent to make money. Most of our scholars don't really have any institutions that they're building or even thinking about building. It's all about information dissemination. And that's very dangerous, because information is not going to save black people. It is essential, it is critical, we need it, but it will transform nothing. It's not the knowing, it's the doing. But you need to know to do. But what happens when you know and you're not interested in doing? You get intellectual masturbation. And I think right now the black consciousness community is in a state of intellectual paralysis and intellectual masturbation, where all we want is the knowledge, but we don't want no part of the responsibility.
Dr. Umar Johnson, thank you so much. In the words of Great DeGilton, we love you madly. Keep on producing and pushing.